Tonight, on The National, Martin Brian Mulroney, Prime Minister of Canada.
But also deprived of freedom.
A scolding from the Pope for the rich nations of the world. And on The Journal, the new order. We'll talk to two key ministers with economic portfolios in the new cabinet. What are their priorities for Canadians? The National with Milton Nash.
Good evening. He's sworn in. Brian Mulroney took the oath of office today, Canada's 18th Prime Minister. Right behind him was his cabinet, and it's the biggest cabinet in Canadian history with 40 members. The day began at Government House when John Turner formally resigned. Jason Moskowitz reports.
Limousines were lined up on Parliament Hill, the cars that would bring the new ministers and their families to the swearing-in ceremony at Government House. But before they got there, John Turner took his last walk as Prime Minister. He went to Government House to resign. That was at 1:30 this afternoon. At 2:30...
Brian Mulroney being sworn in now as Prime Minister, the 18th of this country, by Gordon Oswald Eston, the Clerk of the Privy Council.
Prime Minister Mulroney won the largest majority in Canadian history, and now he'll head the largest cabinet to go with it. There'll be 40 around the cabinet table. Remarkably, almost half of them were ministers before, albeit briefly when Joe Clark was the Prime Minister.
I, Charles Joseph Clark, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
Joe Clark wanted to be External Affairs Minister, and Mulroney gave him just what he wanted. There had been internal pressure from Clark's enemies to make him an ambassador, to make sure he wasn't at the cabinet table. Mulroney resisted. He listened as Clark loyalists went to bat for him. As for Clark, he's ready to go to work.
I will be at the United Nations next week, and will be using that occasion to meet with other foreign ministers who will be there.
John Crosbie was one person at the ceremony without even a trace of a smile.
Crosbie do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
Shut out of every conceivable economic portfolio, Crosbie will be Justice Minister. He claims he wasn't as unhappy as he looked.
Happy with the portfolio you got, sir?
Yes, very happy.
You're not disappointed that you didn't wind up with an economic portfolio?
No, I'm a lawyer originally.
In Parliament since 1957, Erik Neilson will be Deputy Prime Minister and President of the Privy Council. He'll be Mulroney's right-hand man with real power. He's a man who doesn't always have patience with reporters' questions.
What does Deputy Prime Minister mean in practice?
You don't expect me to answer a question like that in a few seconds, surely.
Well, is it an important job, sir?
I, George Harris Hees, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
At 74 in the House since 1951, George Hees made it back to the cabinet today. A veteran himself, he'll be Veterans Affairs Minister. Hees was a Diefenbaker cabinet minister more than 20 years ago.
It is more exciting the second time around.
After the ceremony, they had big smiles. People like Flora MacDonald and David Crombie couldn't hide their exuberance. From Government House, the new ministers went to their first cabinet meeting, but most had no idea where to go. In the parliamentary interview room, the opposition gave its critique.
And of course, to reinforce that, large ministry will be the appropriate bureaucracy.
I hope, and more relevantly, the people of Canada hope, it will be the most productive cabinet in the history of Canada.
Even the opposition was willing to concede today was Mulroney's day. The new Prime Minister would call it a new day. But there's no question there are several old faces. The best and the brightest around Joe Clark are in the cabinet. Mulroney cleverly crafted a mix of old and new. If there were any old battle scars from years gone by, Mulroney did everything today to heal them and start afresh. Jason Moskowitz, CBC News, Ottawa.